Welcome back to the unofficial Squarespace Entrepreneur Podcast. My name is Omari Harribin, and if this is your first time listening, this show is all about building a business on Squarespace, especially businesses that serve the users of Squarespace. So if that sounds like you, then you're in the right place. A few weeks ago, I sat down with Justin Mabee of Justin Mabee Design. Justin is a top-rated OG Squarespace expert, and this was our very first conversation of really diving into his Squarespace career and getting to know who he is as a designer and as a person. Yeah, man. So glad to have you on the show.
Yeah,
Today it's raining, it's pouring where I'm at. And I was actually just listening to a podcast, My First Million. Have you ever heard that one?
I haven't listened to it now.
Yeah, it's like they interview people about how they made their first million, basically.
Hmm.
And this episode, it's a Indian billionaire who he's talking about like just the common traits of entrepreneurs early in age,
Hmm.
like in your formative years, and
Yeah,
just had me thinking. um, so anyway, what's going on with you right now, Justin? Like, where are you in your Squarespace journey? What's like top of mind? What's kind of steering your ship right now?
yeah. Well, it's raining here too, so we're in the same boat with that. But it's actually funny because now is now you know that now is actually a really rough time,
Yeah.
um, because leads have really dried up over the past 6 months to 8 months or so.
Hmm.
2023 was kind of rough, but not as rough as it's been so far this year. Um, I realized kind of late in the year last year that a lot of the positioning on my website was wrong. It was more about um, me as an expert and me as a Squarespace designer versus what I can do for my clients and what I
Hmm.
can do for people who are already on Squarespace or thinking about Squarespace.
Hmm.
I saw I worked with Henry over at SEO Space. Shout out to him, to improve a lot of my SEO. But what I realized after getting an 80% jump in traffic was I had no more conversions. It was pretty much the same, pretty stagnant
Hmm.
beyond that. And and that helped me realize that a lot of the positioning was wrong on my website. So I've been reworking that to kind of do a little bit of a redesign, which I just launched a couple weeks ago. And really refine my services as well.
Yeah.
I focused a lot on custom projects over there on my last version, and now I'm focused a lot more on live support and design days. Mostly live support, really, because I I just see a need for it because
Yeah.
Squarespace obviously doesn't offer live support beyond instant chat if it's
Hmm.
available.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a lot of people who could use live support
Yeah.
and need help with that because and I've got a history in doing live support anyway too from
Right.
60 back when it was around.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
I was gonna bring that up.
yeah,
Um, you're like 15 years in now, right?
12, but yeah,
12. Okay.
almost 13. Yeah,
We're gonna catch back up because I think this is gonna be a good one for our listeners because everyone goes through this,
yeah.
and I don't even think I've had too many episodes where we get into like this part of the journey of like, all right, what do you do when leads start to dry up and you've got to reposition and figure out like where you're going from here. Um, but what got you into web design in the first place? Like, why is this a career for you? Like, why are you not just dropping out and perhaps gonna go do something else that you could possibly do?
Well, it's funny because I have been considering that recently, but just because I think as some of us have gotten older and you know been through freelance a lot longer than some others, um, I don't think it's that we've lost kind of a fire for it, but I think it's more that we see those full-time jobs that have perks and that have ongoing
Hmm.
money and that have just a secure safety net,
Yep.
and it looks very attractive when you aren't sure where your next lead's coming from.
Yep.
So I have looked at that. It's not happening just yet. I've been applying to a few things, but really kind of where I got my start was 60, which is used to be called Design Live. Way back in the day, I think around like 2000.
15. Oh,
Yeah,
earlier, maybe.
yeah, I think it was a
14.
little bit earlier than that. It may have been like 14, 15.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so it was called Design Live. They were based in Nashville. I knew Alex and David really well personally. Worked at the same co-working space they were, and that's where I had started building a site back in 2012, and then when I moved to Nashville, I found Design Live and started getting my chops through doing live sessions.
Yeah.
$2 a minute, dollar a minute, and the first website I built for a client off of 60, she booked me for 4 hours, or she booked me for an hour. It went 4 hours, and we got about halfway done.
Yeah.
We were just on Zoom for 4 straight hours. And then she said, "Well, are you available tomorrow that we can just finish this up? Or like, can we keep going or whatever?" And I said, "Like, well, I've got to go to bed, but we can do this tomorrow." And we
Yeah.
took another 4 hours the next day, and I built her whole website in 8 hours over 2 days. And so I just continued to get a lot more work through 60.
Yeah.
60 kind of pivoted a little bit to more of the, hopping on a call and then giving a project rate.
Hmm.
So a lot of my leads that came through were coming through 60. And then 60 kind of, went under, probably about 4-ish years later.
Hmm.
I stuck with them basically through everything.
Yeah.
They went through Y Combinator. They basically went from Design Live, Y Combinator, and then they changed their name to 60
Yeah.
with the idea of getting you a no code developer for your web app for within 60 seconds.
Hmm.
And so they kind of tried to pivot more from Squarespace only to more web apps completely. So like having Webflow developers, having
Hmm.
Figma developers, and all kinds of things. And it just didn't work. But I think when I talked to David a lot about the whole project, I think we basically talked a lot about how the concept of live support like that doesn't really work as a platform,
Mm.
um, because of the amount of money it takes to get in front of that customer.
Right. The cost of
Um,
acquisition. Yeah.
yeah, the cost of acquisition. But for an individual or for individuals, it is lucrative because
Hmm.
you don't have a ton of overhead when it comes to like paying developers and paying fees and being a startup and going
Hmm.
through burn and all this other stuff. And so that's why I decided to start offering live support more recently, because I had tried to actually build my own 60 for a little while and it didn't go
Yeah.
anywhere. And I think it just works better for individuals. So that's kind of where I got things started.
Yeah, that's dope because I didn't have any idea. But like Design Live was my first partner for like
Yeah.
sending leads to that
Yeah.
I wanted to kind of structure my business in a way where it was more like a front end lead generating for other services.
Yeah.
Which funny enough, that's kind of what I'm returning to.
Yeah.
Um, but like I've since 60 has left the market, I feel like it was just a thing that was perhaps just ahead of its time in a sense where this is pre-pandemic. So like,
Yeah.
the Squarespace user base is like doubled since 2018, 2019.
Mm-hmm.
So like that service, in my opinion, has always been like top three demanded services by or
Yeah.
top three unmet demand by just like Squarespace customers. Right? It's just
Yeah.
like,
Absolutely.
can I just quickly get on a screen share with an expert for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, solve my problem? Like we do that through Loom and it's always just a really good experience when a human being just how because the thing is most problems that a Squarespace customer has, like there's way more there's less I need you to build my entire site unless you're coming with you're coming with a business idea or
Yeah.
exist. But for the average Squarespace customer, right,
Yeah.
they need a pick me upper. They need someone to come in and polish off the site at the end. Like that is like I've that always comes up for as long as I've been in this space. It's like, yeah, I did it myself. It looks all right, but like, can I just get someone to like make it look better for me?
Yeah.
Um, so I think it's
Oh, and
great
then
that, yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, and then you also have the DIYers that get stuck on like one thing because they don't understand how Squarespace works.
Yeah.
And they may have like watched videos or may have like read help center articles. They just can't figure it out.
Hmm.
I've got a client right now who messaged me on LinkedIn, needing some help with a basic blog, and he literally said in his most recent message to me that he feels like he tried 6 or 7 different templates and none of them had a blog in them. And I mean, I can fix that in 20 minutes, dude. I can just show you how
Yeah.
you can put a blog in any of the websites that
Hmm.
you want to create. So
Yeah, I mean I think that's like a great model, the live model. And then as a because as a solo freelancer, like I've thought about this as well. It's like there's only two exits because essentially you're developing a really good skill set and a great exit is a great job, right? It's
mhm.
like, I'm so capable that like I'm surviving, selling myself and provide I'm doing all this stuff where if I just could just focus on doing this thing and I've got a business is doing the rest of the work, I'd be in a good position, right? And
Yeah,
then I found the other exit is like, well, going from freelancer to some sort of online business owner where you're selling products.
yeah,
Um, and you're no longer connected to the direct one-on-one thing. But I think this is like a when I'm thinking about like sending a referral, I love
hmm
it when the destination is like fixed. It's like this person does this thing and they do this thing really well, and I don't have to like second guess or question if they're doing it this week or is it are they going to be doing it next? It's like this is the thing that they do. Boom.
yeah,
So as far as like positioning goes, there's so much freelancers who are just free to do anything. I was one of them. That it's hard for you to build up consistency for doing any of those things that you're free to do. But if you can
hmm
create a container where you're still, there's still a whole lot of flexibility in what you just described because you might have a client who needs you for a week and they're like,
yeah,
hey, it's worth it for me to just like carve out 2 hours a day with you for a week to work on this thing. It turns out to be cheaper than if I had to go through tons of back and forth revisions over 6 to 8 weeks.
yeah. It
Like,
doesn't take 6 to 8 weeks. It doesn't take
yeah,
6 to 8 months. It doesn't, you're not getting stuck on like, well, I can't make this code work, so now I got to figure it out. Like, I can work pretty rapidly in that amount of time. And
yeah,
the reason that I've wanted to do design days really is because I did recently get a full time Squarespace job, with a firm in New York City.
hmm,
And so like I've been able to kind of restructure my days around that full time gig.
yeah,
It's very chill, so it's not like like I have to be at my desk every single hour. But being able to structure the days where okay, one day I'm working all day on the firm's stuff, but then the next day I have a design day booked, so I'm working on
hmm,
that whole day. So
yeah,
I'm not trying to like put out fires constantly
hmm,
because once I get through that design day, we're done. If they need more time, they'll let me know and they'll book
yeah.
another day and we're good to go. Same thing with support.
So that is that how your sorry, is that how your schedule is set up now? So like if I wanted to book some time with you next week, I could just do that and
Yeah.
we work on some.
Yeah, and the way that I have it set up is I only allow like a certain number of them per day. So like
Hmm.
I'm not doing 2 design days in the same day. It's not
Right.
going to happen.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, could I probably, but but I'm not going to because
Yeah.
I would rather give those clients that that entire time, like all of my attention during that day. And so I'm even structuring my custom projects that way now.
Hmm.
So like if somebody comes to me and say, "Hey, I need a 15-page website," we talk about the complexity of it. We talk about if they need code. They talk about kind of the overall inspiration of what they're looking for, and then I'll say, okay, this looks like it would be 2 to 3 design days. I also do half design days, so I could say, okay, I think this is going to take 2.5 design days. That's enough to cover, day one is we cover this, day two is we cover this, and then the last, half day is to get you out the door. And it's this much, and you book those out. Actually, you book them one at a time. So we do the first one, and then at the end of the first one, you book the next one. And that way I have a goal of what we're doing that day.
Mm-hmm.
And the client has a goal of what they're going to do that day. And they can also reserve the time. I just talked to an old client of mine who really loved the new structure because he's super busy, but he can make time in his schedule. So he can reserve a Wednesday off from everything else that he's doing to
Mm-hmm.
focus on website build.
How do you think about content?
Ooh, so that's something I haven't fully solved just yet. You mean like content
Yeah.
from clients?
No, no. Oh, no, no, no. Like
Oh,
your
my own
own
content.
business. Your own business content. 'Cause I know you
Okay, yeah,
mentioned like, kind of repositioning or like maybe you're attracting the wrong audience. Like how?
yeah. So the way that I'm actually been working with Sarah Moon, who's a really great friend. We've actually known about each other in our same circles for
Hmm.
years, probably almost a decade, but
Yeah.
we've never actually interacted. And Kirsten Martin, a couple of months ago, posted on Instagram that her friend Sarah Moon suddenly had availability because one of her clients ended up having to drop out. And having heard what Sarah's done before, seen her website, seen, talked to people like Kristen who have worked directly with her, I knew I had to get on her books because of everything I've been through over the last 6 months of positioning wrong and, not focusing on marketing and all this other stuff. So we're about 2 months into the package that she is doing with me, and it's really helping me kind of re-understand how to structure my own content.
Hmm.
Um, because all the content that's currently on my website is for designers. It's not really for clients.
Hmm.
There's some there, but it's kind of few and far between, and it's a little bit more geared towards expertise versus actual I can help, or this is how I can help my client do
Yeah.
things. Um, and so we're talking a lot. Like this past week, we talked a lot about pillar posts, coming up with a main post and then supporting posts beyond that.
Hmm.
Um, and then, you know, I think some of it has also been a little bit scary when it comes to AI of am I still going to be able to rank properly? Is it still worth it for me to write this rich content that I've been, paying for and working through myself? Because I
Hmm.
work with a copywriter as well to help me kind of refine some of the stuff as well. Um, and I kind of freaked out a little bit on it, or on Sarah about the recent changes with Google,
Yeah.
Google search and iterative AI. And she was just basically like, I don't think this is going to cause an issue. I mean, content is still king. And even a lot of the AI answers that have come up recently, according to, with Squarespace stuff,
Hmm.
Sarah comes up as part of the answer. And actually some of the stuff that I already rank for,
Hmm.
I also come up with as the answer,
Yeah.
with it. So I think it's just a matter of reframing a little bit and understanding how Google's going to structure this content because it's more focused on expertise. I think it's EEAT,
Hmm. Authority and
expertise.
trust.
Yeah, authority, trust. Yeah, trustworthiness. Yeah, all that.
Yeah. And I mean, you got it. Um, I, there's like okay, how do I say this? I think there's like a really easy opportunity that is probably underrated.
Mm,
And it's the fact that, the problem that you help a client solve tomorrow, it might seem like such a one-off. It might seem like no one else could possibly care about this or no, but I found that like taking the 5 minutes after you get off the hour call to just like, all right, here's what just happened,
mm-hmm,
or here's what I just solved, easy. Like the compounding effect over time of other people looking for that one specific thing. Like these, like in a business like this where there's always changes, and there's always like something new to learn, even for the expert, the 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 end user is constantly looking for someone or something they can like attach to just like get that one small one-off question answered. And
Yeah.
you literally become a hero, like you become a hero to a stranger in Iowa, because no one else cared to take the 3 minutes to just like record how you just did that small
Yeah.
little thing that is like inconsequential, but it changes someone's whole day. And now it's like triggered a ripple effect somewhere in the future, literally somewhere in the future, 2 years from today. Someone is like listening to this and they're like, oh, yeah, that's,
Yeah. Yeah.
so
It's awesome.
I found it's like a really cool experience when the small things are given just enough like extra, let me just capture that.
Yeah.
I remember when we started our selling, or before, like right before I started selling plugins, um, I had just come out of my like lowest point as a Squarespace entrepreneur. It was like end of 2016, beginning of 2017. My site was down for 6 months. I didn't have a Squarespace business for 6 months. I was just kind of like meandering out in the wild web, trying to offer whatever services I could offer. And one day, you get those emails in your inbox, and it's like, "Hey, I need a website for this big project," and you're like, "All right, I'm back in the game. Like, let's go." But this time around, I was like, "Okay, what have I learned, and how can I like make the most of this new start?" And the new start was just like, all right, let me keep a tweak log. Let me keep a small log of
Yeah.
just the smallest things. And the funny thing is, I didn't even get to like 6 tweaks before it turned into products, right?
Hmm.
And I think the the product side of things, I was talking about this with a last guest. Like on the product side, when it comes organically off of that same stream of demand, it's really just people responding with like, all right, it's way better to just pay for this small thing than it is for me to like go through the headache of figuring it out myself. So
Yeah.
it's like at the end of every headache that you go through, there's a product.
Yeah.
And the product is the thing that saves everyone else from that same headache, right? So it's like the gem of this whole thing is like you can't avoid the headaches. You're gonna have your own unique headache, and the reason you're having your headache is because no one solved your problem for you yet.
Hmm.
Right? And then you solve it for yourself, but guess what? You're not the only one who's gonna have that headache. There's
Yeah.
8 billion people out here. So it's
Yeah.
like it's just this cycle that I've found that I feel really passionate about
Yeah.
because as much as I practice it is as much as I see, the long-term effect of it. Um, and yeah, man, you just brought that to the surface. So, what else, man? What was I remember I saw you at Circle Day last year and you spoke, and
Hmm.
you guys had a couple of slides from like the young Justin. um, take me back to like, the late 90s, early 2000s. Like what were you doing that time in terms of like your budding entrepreneur career?
Ooh. Man. The 90s. I mean, I was born in 86, so I
Me
mean,
too.
uh, I'm getting close to 40, and that's a little terrifying, I'm sure, for you as well. Um, Man, I like 90s. I wasn't doing anything entrepreneurship wise. I think my entrepreneurship really kind of started when I was in college. Um, I went to school for music business. I wanted to be a music review writer for Christian music, and I don't
Mhm.
even listen to Christian music anymore. Um, and I kind of, I guess I kind of foolishly thought that writing would always be a thing that people would pay for, which I found out pretty quickly that journalism is not something that people pay for. um, and so, yeah, I think kind of that entrepreneurial spirit kind of started with, I wanted to start my own blog so I could post my own reviews and so people could read them. So I had a Tumblr way back in the day. I did not customize it as much as some other people did. It was just a place for me to write at that point.
Yeah.
And so I had a Tumblr blog. I'm blanking on the name of it. I think it was like Through Windows. I think it was something like that. It was supposed to be this concept of like, seeing through the crap and finding like the gems kind of thing. It was, whatever it was. But then, then I had switched over. I tried to build a WordPress site. And it was terrible. Couldn't figure any of it out. And then I think I started with Wix, and within like not even a couple days later, I was just like, I can't do this. This is terrible. Yeah. And then I found Squarespace and built my first website on there for my blog. And I was still in college at that time. And so I started offering, to build, music websites for friends for free. Just because, they needed something on the internet. I wanted to help them out. And especially being in school for music business, I mean, I was, managing a band, quote unquote, managing a band. So I had to make a band website. And, then I made websites for some singer-songwriters and then for some local people in Memphis where I was at. And that just kept growing, really. And then, the next big step entrepreneurial wise was after graduation, I ended up in Nashville and then found Design Live. And then, it's funny you brought up, like late 2016, 2017, when you were kind of at your lowest, because I feel like that was the beginning of my freelance, like full-time career. Cause I remember your site being down, because I'm just like, it's not a bad thing. It was just like, I was looking to your stuff to find like, okay, code, things like that. And I remember your site being down, and I really wanted to, like, because I had seen some of the Squarespace stuff you had posted previously. Yeah. And so I really wanted to get some stuff from you. But I worked a couple startup jobs beyond that. I worked at the Apple Store for about 6 months. Worked at at Lyft corporate for a while doing customer service. Yeah. And then worked at Postmates before they got bought by Uber. And then I just decided to go full-time freelance because I had basically, people ask me all the time, like, what made me decide to go full-time freelance? And I think it was because I did it a little bit more smartly than some people do, where I was working full-time, and it was my side hustle. And I basically said, if I can make my paycheck from a 40-hour-a-week job 3 times, so like if I can make whatever I was making from Postmates for 3 months in a row from my freelance business, I can quit. Yeah. So, I mean, I worked for a couple different startups and then moved into full-time freelance, and, kind of bungled my way a little bit because those first few months, after I quit the full-time job were rough, and I didn't make the 2,500 or the however much that I was making from my full-time job for those next few months, because I was focused on just doing marketing and meeting with people and networking. And it's funny to think about it now because of the stuff that I did, like the heavy hustling back then, I don't really do anymore. I'm not like trying to go out to every networking event or meet every single person that I can and like offer them a website kind of thing. And I feel like a lot of us kind of get out of that once things are going well. And I've always been a victim of my own doing, where I don't focus on marketing. I haven't really focused on marketing for a long time, and I mean, I barely write blog posts before the last year or so. And so I think it's just, kind of with the trajectory of my freelance career, I've really, you know, made a lot of good connections, met a lot of great people. Like the best year of my business was 2020,
Mhm.
because of the pandemic and people moving online and everything. But it's been a little bit less each year since then, and I think it's really culminated to this year where I've really realized I don't have a ton of marketing stuff that I've done previously to fall back on.
Mhm.
I've never really utilized my newsletter list. I've never really utilized reaching out to old clients, and keeping up with old clients. And so those are all things I'm starting to do now.
Yeah.
But it's all things that are going to take a
Mhm.
while for them to start to come to fruition.
Yeah, yeah. Definitely. You know, the the old clients thing is something that I didn't like anticipate, or like
Yeah,
think about in the beginning, because if I did, I would have maybe structured things differently, or I would have anticipated the fact that, hey, these people might still need you 8 years down the road.
yeah.
Um and would rather not go somewhere else if you can figure out how to still meet that. So like um I mean I don't know where I was going with that other
Well,
than
I was just going to say I feel like there are people that I've talked to, the clients that I've worked with, that
yeah,
they consider me to be their web designer.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
that, like they don't talk to anybody else. They don't think of anybody else when somebody says I need a website. I'm the person they talk about.
Mhm.
Like, and whether it's 8 years later or a month later, like I'm the guy that they contact no matter what it is. And I still have people that do that. I had somebody from 60
Yeah.
who booked me. The last time she booked me was through 60. She actually emailed me last month and said, I tried the 60 link, but it now goes to an error page. How can I book you? And I was like,
Yeah.
well, 60 hasn't been around for like 6 years. So, um, but it is just interesting to find those people that, you know, once you connect with them, once you give them a great experience, like they don't look at anybody else at all.
Yeah. The big challenge with doing a freelance business is like as a as a business, there's so many different functional roles that like literally require a different part of your brain.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you have to somehow develop those parts of your brain and like manage all of those different things and stay alive at the same time. And so that's like
Yeah.
a lot for one human being. And so it's like we live in a world where there is the potential for like a solo business that does really well, but it also requires like transforming your mindset in such a way that you can like take on these things that would require departments and teams and so on. And so
Yeah.
on a basic level, you've got like, all right, how are we going to get people in the door? Okay, well, how are we going to like turn them into customers? And then how are we going to deliver this thing that we've promised them? And
Mm-hmm.
what I've discovered is that like I can do a little bit of all of these roles, right? But there's some parts that I'm going to do a lot better than others. And so from as early as Design Live, I was like, all right, they're doing something really good over here, which feels like a back end to something that I want to offer. How can I like it never really materialized that well, but it was still always my mindset. And it's interesting because even saying that where it's like, all right, had this mindset and sometimes it didn't like turn into anything, but like does that mean that I shouldn't keep this mindset?
Yeah.
If long term it still proves to be like my end of last year for me, it was the realization that shit, like I have these limitations that like, I can't get beyond. And so I'm no longer going to try to like I'm no longer going to try to fight these limitations. I'm going to accept them and then build or, use my creativity within my constraints as opposed to trying to be unconstrained in my creativity, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah.
So for me, where I've been at lately is just okay. Tried a bunch of stuff. You know what works for you. You know what doesn't work for you. You know that there's but so much you can do in a day, in a week, in a month. So if you can only prioritize on one or a few of those things, like what would that be? And then how can you like put other things in place to like still have a system set up where there's a flow?
Yeah.
So, talking to you, part of what's going on in the back of my head is like, all right, perfect. I know exactly what to send Justin, like if that comes, up in our inbox, because selling plugins in my like I hired a operations guy recently, and I was telling
Hmm.
him, I'm like, the plugin business is almost like um paid lead magnets, right?
Hmm.
Where once you buy a plugin, now you're in our world, our universe of, hey, there's all this other stuff, to solve your Squarespace related problems that we might not offer all of it, but we've got some friends who do. And so I say that to say like, uh, yeah, man, that's that's where I've been at, and it's a transformation for me because for the past decade, I've said things to myself where I'm like, I don't do this, or I don't do that,
Hmm.
or I don't want to take that responsibility, and I've reached a point where I'm like, well, if you want to accomplish this other thing, the only way is to assume responsibility for something greater.
Yeah.
um, and so it's called a lot out of me because it's forced me to like put a part of myself to rest, like a part of the part of me that like got started. I've had to retire him. I've had to
Hmm.
like be like, the me who created this can't isn't the me who's gonna finish it. Like the me who wrote the story isn't the me who is gonna edit the story. The me who
Yeah.
came up with the problem isn't the same me who's gonna be able to solve it. So it's forced me to like get into develop different parts of my brain that I probably hadn't been lightened up before to
Yeah.
say, okay, maybe I don't necessarily need to hold on to the limitations that I've held on to that have kept me comfortable. Maybe I can let those go and accept some new limitations that force me to be creative in a different way.
Yeah. I feel like I agree. I really like what you said about how like the you that started this whole thing isn't the you that's going to finish it.
Yeah.
And so I feel like for me, the way that I've looked at all this is like I'm always trying to get to the next thing of like, do I need to learn Framer? Do I need to try and really sit with WordPress? Do I need to pivot to Wix? Like
Yeah.
what do I need to do? And every time that I start to get that way, I come back to Squarespace.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's muscle memory. It's the things that I do on a regular basis, but have I haven't fully changed my mindset over the time that I've been doing design. My mindset has always been to try and use as little custom code as possible, and or if I'm going to use code, it's tried and true code. It's from people that I trust, that I recommend, or that have recommended me, that I recommend to other people. And it's not super complicated. It's not messing with other things. Um, and like I'm working on a site right now for a client that has 4,000 lines of code on it plus Square Kicker, and it's a mess. And I would have I just me personally, like, I mean, people can do that, that's completely fine, but you run the risk of alienating your client at that point, or making them rely on you when they might not really want to.
Right.
And it's not to say that you might have a bad relationship with the client, but I'm already talking to this client who's asked me to kind of help her build a couple of things, and even just trying to fix a few of those things, other things have broken, and I've explained that to her, and she now understands she might need to do a little bit of a mini redesign
Yeah.
to really fix a lot of that code, because it's like a template plus all the code plus Square Kicker, and like just trying to figure out uh what ties to what and what's necessary and what's not.
Yeah.
um a lot of times some designers will focus on design versus conversion.
Mm-hmm.
um they'll focus on design over functionality. um and I always try to combine all of it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
is it going to be good for conversion? Is it going to look good? And is it going to function properly? And if I'm going to add code, it's not going to, have an issue with any of those things.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting, man. There's uh, like you have to have a conviction in what you're doing, right?
Hmm.
And a lot of, for me, like that conviction, like it comes with time and like reps and repetition. And I used to struggle pre-conviction because it was like, oh, I don't know exactly like what is like the truth essentially. Like, what should I be believing about like the way to go about something, or what's the best thing to do? Um and like in those early, I guess, client facing experiences, the conviction to say, all right, like this is what is the best thing for you. I think, when you have that and you can develop that, it makes you a much more valuable, resource for your clients.
Yeah, because they look at you as the expert at that point. I mean, I've definitely one of the things I regularly hear is like, "Well, you're the expert. What do you think?"
Yeah.
And some clients will take that way too far. Like, I don't know anything about the thing that you're asking me about, but I'll tell you, like, like, oh, should I have a testimonial here? I mean, I guess, like, I mean, you should, like, if you have them, you should put them on there, or
Mm-hmm.
just things like that. But I feel like I have a tendency to go a little bit more expert mode in some calls
Mm-hmm.
because I feel like it's necessary to have all this like backing information to understand how certain things can work in Squarespace.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because I try to explain like the one thing I always try to explain to people is some people will always say that they want like X website. They want like they want to build Reddit on
Yeah.
Squarespace,
Yeah.
and I'm just like, no, you don't. You don't even want to try to do that. Um, it's just trying to help people understand that there's a lot more nuance to these platforms that we use on a daily basis
Mm-hmm.
than I think a lot of people realize. Um, I think always back to people wanting Facebook groups, like or like wanting a forum on their website and stuff like that. And I always have to remind people, if you're going to integrate this kind of thing, you have to have moderation. You
Yeah.
have to have you have to be looking at it every single day and blocking people that are on there that shouldn't be on there, and managing those things. And 9 times out of 10, they're like, "Oh, I actually don't want to do all that admin work." And it's fun. So it's funny that you mentioned about how you've hired a few people to do operations and things like that. I've always had probably since the second or third year of my business, I've always had an assistant. I've gone through like 6 assistants now just because of life changes and things
Mm-hmm.
like that. I've always had an assistant and I've always had an accountant
Mm-hmm.
slash bookkeeper. Um, that I've had the bookkeeper because the first year of my business, I got a bill for five figures
Yeah.
from the IRS, and I didn't want that to happen again.
Yeah.
Um, and so I definitely think that once you get to a certain point, you have to start looking at because not everybody's brain is going to think that way and work that way when it comes
Yeah.
to admin or accounting or bookkeeping and things like that. And I just can't
Mm-hmm.
wrap my mind around those things sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
I can barely follow up with clients at that point. So like that's where the assistant comes in play.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you probably have to be like a superhuman. But I just think it's one of those things that, like, I didn't think, oh, I want to be well, I did think that at one point in time, but it's not like I went into my freelance entrepreneurial career like trying to start a business, like
Right.
I wasn't trying to start a startup, or I wasn't trying to be a CEO or founder or anything like that. I just wanted a lifestyle business for my family,
Mm-hmm.
and which put me in a whole different like category of entrepreneurship, right? Because like the 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 MBA types, you mentioned lifestyle business, they're like, that's not appealing. Um,
Yeah.
so going into a lifestyle type of business, it's like, well, guess what? It's still a business. You still
Mm-hmm.
need
Yeah.
these things still need to be attended to, and um, the rules still apply.
Yeah.
but lately I've been thinking a lot about how the rules translate or how things translate from big business down to micro business or solo business. And one of the things I've thought about, particularly with like the Squarespace news, is the idea of um, building a building in public as a solopreneur versus doing everything kind of in the shadows, and the difference between sharing your income reports publicly like as a blogger, um,
Hmm.
versus just minding your business, and how those things like scale up and down, thinking about like, okay, who am I, who are my shareholders and my, obviously I'm the primary, but like my family, right? How do they benefit from my business activities? How am I making sure that like I'm increasing the value for our family in terms of,
Hmm.
our lifestyle, and how are these activities all connected? Um,
Yeah.
how do
And
you
that's
think
why
of,
like all
yeah,
this, well, and that's why all this stuff is, what's happening with me right now, where like
yeah,
my positioning was wrong,
yeah,
my leads have dried up, all these other things. That's why like it's not just nerve wracking, it's terrifying
yeah,
because, I've built this whole thing to support my family and support, I agree with you. I didn't get into this to start a business. I got in it to provide for my family and provide for myself, and give myself the freedom so we can travel, so we can, do what we want to do. My wife just opened up a bookstore because she wanted to. That's something that she's wanted to do her entire life.
yeah,
And so she's able to do that because of the business that I have. And for it to, be, I don't want to say, I guess I don't want to say failing, but like at least just like for it to be coming, off steam,
yeah.
is terrifying.
Hmm.
And so like I feel like I have to be looking every day to try and figure out what I need to do to make things better. Including, like if I need to let an assistant go or if I need to like cut costs and different things like that.
Yep.
Um, so it's, yeah, I completely get it with, you know, we got into this to build something for our family.
Yeah. And like you just said, like those same macro considerations of like layoffs, like well, as a solo business person, you might have to lay off your one, contractor, or your,
Hmm.
the one agency that you're working with. And yeah, it's a challenging journey. Um,
Yeah.
like I've gone through different seasons of this, like struggle period, I'll call it. And each season you try to think like, okay, what did I learn last time that like that worked to get out? Like what was my get out card the last time? Or what was, after I came out of the storm and everything cleared, like what was the first realization I had about, the thing that brought me through the storm?
Hmm.
And so each time around, it's been like just a reminder that, like, for example, like this most recent time around, it's like, guess what, Omari? Life is long, and there's going to be bigger storms at bigger levels,
Hmm.
and at different levels. And so once upon a time it was like, how do I avoid this? How do I get around this? Then it was like, oh, I'm in the middle of this. Okay, how do I like just stay put and stay still in the middle of this? And then it's like, this again?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and then it becomes how do I prepare for it because it's going to happen.
Exactly,
Because I
exactly,
think that's the natural
exactly.
progression. It's like, like, okay, how do I prevent this from happening?
Yep,
Oh crap, now it's happening.
yep,
And then,
yeah,
well, now I need to
back.
prepare for it because it's going to happen whether I like it or not.
Yep, yep, yep. And while as you've done that, then something else shows up, and you're like, oh, new challenges.
Yeah.
Um, but the day to day like mindset is so hard. And the thing that I've used consistently for the day to day is like, well, there's but so much I can do today. And when you're in like a tough situation, a lot of you it's easy to spend time trying to get out of today in terms of like, all right, how do I make sure tomorrow's okay, or how do I make sure like the future's okay? But it's like, well, guess what? There's still like these three things that you have to attend to today, that if you don't attend to them, tomorrow's not going to be any better.
Yeah.
And so I've had this like, uh there's a movie, I think, I don't even know if I've watched the movie, but I've just read about it enough times, where the guy's stuck on Mars and he's like, just one problem at a time to get home. And
Yeah.
um
I love
yeah,
that movie, The Martian.
yeah, The Martian. I don't even know if I've watched it, but I've lived it where I know, I like feel like I
Yeah.
know it. Where it's like, yeah, one problem at a time, and that's gonna get you there.
Yeah. I mean, I deal with that on a regular basis. I mean, I have ADHD, and so there's some days where like my brain functioning just isn't doing it that
Yeah,
day.
yeah,
And I've had to grapple with the fact that there's only so much I can do some days.
yeah,
And so when I get to that point, it's like, okay, what do I need to get done today, or what can wait until tomorrow?
yeah,
And it doesn't always, my brain doesn't always translate what is most important, so the priorities aren't always great. Um, and I also suffer from a lot. I don't know if you suffer from this too, but I suffer from a lot of like uh, productivity guilt, where like if I'm resting, like why am I
yeah,
not working?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And so that's a phrase I've actually heard a lot more recently. Is this concept of, like, there is no rest anymore, because we're always worried about, like, okay, I'm resting, but I'm just watching TV, scrolling on my phone. So,
hmm,
what am I actually disconnecting from?
yeah,
And so I've gotten more and more annoyed with social media over the last few years,
yeah,
um, and I think, just I just keep pushing it away and just focusing on work, or focusing on other things, or watching TV, or playing video games. Is just something that I'm not checking, for notifications on a daily basis.
yeah. I've gotten tired too. And I think it's like our age, yeah, like
Yeah.
part where it's like, I was a freshman in college when I signed up for Facebook, and there was just a handful of schools on there. So it's like,
Hmm.
I don't really
Same.
want I don't really want to be there, but I feel lucky that, like, okay, well, I've got a business reason to be there, so at least you know, I'm being productive,
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
if anything.
But then that's the question. And then does social turn into business then?
Well,
So if you're, yeah,
I mean, 10 years ago, I woke up with the realization. I was like, oh shit, we're all advertisers now, whether you're conscious of it or not, because that's who
yeah,
you're playing with. So, every impression is an impression that somebody else is paying for. Um,
hmm,
and, everything that you pay attention to, you're literally like, dollars are literally being, moved, um, because your eyeballs just went, traveled up a screen a couple
yep,
inches, which to
yep,
me, like, is just a fascinating thing to consider, that me sitting down and scrolling for 10 minutes is going to create wealth somewhere in the background for somebody.
yep. Data
So
is the most valuable thing in the world.
I woke up with that realization a decade ago too. I was like, oh
Yeah,
crap, this is the new oil. Like, this is and I was, at that point, I was like, just leaving my corporate career and becoming a father, and like having all of these like spiritual experiences at the same time. I'm like, what is going on? Like, why do I feel this like compulsive need to just like get out of this place I was in?
yeah.
Anyway, I've been like working on a memoir that I'm wrapping up,
That's
so
awesome.
it's had me in a lot of memories. That's why I kind of
Yeah.
um been swimming around that space. You mentioned like college days, blogging, reviewing music. It's interesting because in those days I was making music and I was
Hmm.
selling beats to Christian rappers, some of them from Nashville probably, and
Yeah.
that was my first digital product experience actually. I sold my
Nice.
first beat for $30 to a guy named Same Old Jake in Ohio, and I had to create a PayPal account so I could get the money, and put the WAV files in a zip. And I was like, oh, this is great. Like I could make money on the internet, like by selling beats, like something I love. So, most of my time in college was spent like trying to become, a big music producer and thinking, all right, this Christian beat market is too small. I need to somehow, um, you know, get into a bigger one. So
Yeah.
I was on MySpace in 2006, sending beats to Drake and everyone who's somebody today. Um,
Yeah.
but but yeah, I found that like as often as I like recollect, it helps sometimes to clarify some things in the present where it's like, oh yeah, I remember this feeling or like this where this drive comes from
Hmm.
um or why is it so hard to pay attention to my schoolwork when I've got these other interests? It's like, all right, why is it
Hmm.
so hard to pay attention to probably what I'm supposed to be paying attention to? Yeah, I don't know if you ever figure it out completely, but I like the joy of just like trying to figure it out. Like, all right,
Yeah.
all my I don't know if it's ADHD, but my thing is like I just get curious and I go on these like curiosity quests and curiosity
Hmm.
binges, and it's like because I get this like reward at the end of these things that sometimes it's like a business reward. It's like I go on a quest and like, I stumble on the fact that there's a Squarespace affiliate program before it's public and I sign up for it. Or I go
Yeah.
on this curiosity quest and I stumble on, some solution that I wouldn't otherwise have found. So I don't restrain myself. I don't hold back. I'm just like, I gotta go. If like
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
the interest gets me, I gotta follow it because it usually leads to me maybe sending an email or it sparks an idea that then like becomes something and having gone through this enough times, like my business mind says, all right, make sure you set up something. Like every quest that you go on, make sure you put a flag in the ground of some sort, or you create some kind of small content asset to say, okay, I've been here. And if you ever go back, you can update it, you can upgrade it. But you didn't go on this like for me last year it was like 6 months of trying to code with AI. It's like, all right, you didn't go on this quest for no reason because you left a course here that anyone else who wants to go on this quest they can follow along with your course. Or um, I'm kind of going back to it now, which is why I bring it up. I've been like coding again this past week, and it's given me the headache of like, oh, I'm like addicted, but I can't let go until I solve this problem.
Yeah. You can't leave it until you fix it. I think it's funny that you bring up AI though with it too, because I feel like I like your idea of like these quests that you kind of
Yeah,
go on, because I feel like I do that with AI.
yeah,
I feel like I'll randomly think, oh, like I'll have this thing I need to do, right? Like I wanted to I had a recruiter reach out to me and like say like that my resume was like poorly formatted or whatever. I was like, okay, whatever. And so I
mhm,
looked up some stuff about resumes and I realized it wasn't ATS um,
okay,
compliant. And so it's potentially that like, because it's can't be read by that system, it's getting auto rejected by whoever,
mhm,
whatever system. And so I just said like, oh, I need to go and research how to create an ATS approved resume. Well, let me ask AI to do it, and literally, it did it for me, and like took my existing resume and turned it into ATS approved.
yeah,
And so it's just like testing to see what AI can actually do versus what it can't do, or
yeah,
can't do yet. I guess is the thing.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Like there's things that it couldn't do last year when I was like mucking about that it can do now that I'm glad I was mucking about because now it's like, all right, next step versus starting from
yeah,
scratch with an idea. Um,
exactly.
and
I
that's
did that
another,
with some code in
yeah,
Llama 3 the other day. Like I was trying to fix something with I think that bigger website I was telling you about with all the code in it. I just like took the chunk of code, put it in there, and said like, find the error in this for me,
yeah,
and it found it and was able to fix it and actually adjust it and add a couple of things. So
yeah. It's amazing. Like this is like a golden era in my opinion.
yeah,
Because
I
because of
agree.
like this window of time where it's like not everyone is adapting to it the same way you just described. So it gives you like an incredible upside opportunity and advantage if you can like use it to solve your personal problems, like your,
Hmm.
your unique problems that otherwise would have required you to find an expert somewhere and probably pay them a lot of money. Like, oh my gosh, it's
Yeah.
kind of tripping me out to think about it in real time as we're going through this period because literally everything that I've wanted to do in the past 10 years that I've hit like a mental barrier or mental roadblock, I've been able to like push through in the past 12 to 18 months with AI, which
Yeah,
is
I would agree. There's a lot of stuff that I've been able to fix with AI, or like even just like writing a cover letter, like
yeah.
or helping me write like specific blog pieces of blog posts.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you a quick uh, trick of the trade. My most recent blog post is about the Squarespace acquisition from private equity.
Yep.
That is a third AI.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's because what I did was I had it write a blog post for me, and then I edited it myself, but then I like added a whole bunch of me, pulled out pieces,
Yep.
left pieces out. And so like there's about a third, probably like a paragraph or two that's almost fully AI, but almost everything else is me.
Yeah.
Um, and I've showed it to 4 or 5 people, and they had no idea. So, and
Yeah.
I also like I ran it through plagiarism and AI checkers and stuff like that, and it was good to go. So,
Yeah.
um, use AI to write your blog posts, kids.
Yeah, I mean, I use it the same way. It's like a thought partner, writing partner, whatever, and um, it's made me better in terms of my own voice
Hmm.
because whatever insecurity I might have had about maybe how I worded something, or I can instantly get another opinion, an quote unquote expert opinion, and say, okay,
Yeah.
and then say it again. And so it's like a conversation, right? As opposed to me, I feel like if I were to do with a human being what I've been doing with AI, it like pause, like it would like I would have been, I don't know, that person would have to have been a superhuman assistant. So use your superhuman assistant while they're still like not inside of you, like
Oh, and
before
when
they
they're
get
still
integrated.
relatively cheap.
Yeah, relatively cheap, and you don't have to like integrate it with your physical being yet. Jeez.
Yeah.
But in advance of that time, I think we're okay as we are. Man,
Yeah.
it's been good chatting with you through the storm, Justin.
Yeah, man.
I think it's like this episode is a big metaphor for this Squarespace freelance journey experience where, hey,
Yeah.
sometimes you go through a storm and you got to shut off for a little bit
Yeah.
and then
Yeah,
you
I would
turn
agree.
back on. And it's funny that you were like looking up my site during that period because you're the first person who I've like, shared that with, and they've had that response. And it's like, oh yeah. So, it's the internet is like interesting because it's anonymous largely. And so every day hundreds of people hit the website, and you just, for me it's been a huge uh like experience of letting go, of like, okay, I don't necessarily need to be attached to the judgment of these few hundred people every day. I can like still like go on about my journey and be serving people from wherever I'm at whatever point in time. And
Hmm.
so anyway, man, great chatting with you today. Anything you want to leave with our guests? I mean, with our listeners who are usually guests as well.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I just not really. I mean, I'm just appreciate. I think I just really appreciate you, Omari, and I appreciate like everything that you've done over the years. And I think this has been a great time. So I agree with just about everything you said. That I think that it is this whole talk has just been indicative of what we go through on a regular basis, and it's always going to change. So um, I think what I would say is just stick with it, as much as you can.
Yep, yep, yep. And whatever lights you up in the beginning, don't be afraid to go back to it to light you up again.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Justin.